we've got two flywheels, and it's about both of those flywheels compounding the other one. The more operating revenue we do, the more attractive we become to the capital markets and the more Bitcoin per share we can increase on the Bitcoin strategy. The more we attract capital and the more innovative we are in increasing Bitcoin per share on the Bitcoin strategy side of the business, the more attractive we become to revenue on the operating side of the business. And it's about that dual compounding flywheel of operating business, Bitcoin strategy, and the revenues from the operating business being uncorrelated to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin price, but accelerated by the Bitcoin strategy.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Chair. None of what you will hear is financial advice, and this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So we had Scott Ellam, co-founder and CEO of XCE Connecting Excellence on the show. We talked about XCE's beginnings as a Bitcoin Treasury company, what makes XCE so different in the space, its dual flywheel, and much more. So here's our conversation with Scott.
All right. Hi, Scott, and welcome to the One Share podcast. It's great to have you on.
Hi, guys. Good to be here.
So we like to start with asking our guests how they got into Bitcoin, their Bitcoin journey, and then for you specifically, how you at the end decided to create a Bitcoin Treasury company. So could you walk us through your background here?
Yeah, of course. So I started our flagship and I suppose our flagship executive recruitment company in 2014 and found Bitcoin in 2016. So there's a link between me being a business owner at an early stage in my career and being able to understand the impact that Bitcoin might have in the future. So I'd probably heard of Bitcoin before 2016 and just dismissed it as something that I wouldn't be able to understand. It's something for guys who are into tech, and it's something for guys who are, and I think that probably still happens today when people are first hearing of Bitcoin. So I'd set my business up 2014, and over the first 2 years, I managed to secure an office from a client in the first few months by allowing them to credit an invoice for a procurement director and give me an office for free so I could start employing people and all that kind of thing. So over that first 2 years, I started to gain responsibility for cash flow management and for making sure that the business was preserving cash to be able to pay staff's wages in the future should we have months or periods where the revenue was down or the cash flow was slower coming in than we expected. And then in my personal life, I was at the stage, I was probably 23, 24 years old, I think. In my personal life, I was trying to save up to buy a house. And I'd gone throughout my earlier years always thinking, right, I had a feeling that cash is devaluing. I think a lot of people have that sense in their early 20s anyway. And that the way to store the value that I was creating through my wages and through the business I'd just started would be to buy property. And then in 2016, I'm beginning to build cash in the business balance sheet, and I'm beginning to try and store value in my personal balance sheet. And somebody introduced me to Bitcoin. It was a business contact, and there was just three things stood out very clearly to me that if they were true, and I could verify they were true, would have an impact that I believe was quite significant in the asset class and not necessarily tying that into actual money and currency at that stage. But as soon as I understood that there was 21 million, and this was the first time that there was a mathematically scarce asset available for people to buy and hold. And once I understood that it was unconfiscatable and that no government, no bank, no third party could take the asset from you, and once I understood that you could transport that anywhere in the world, so no borders can prevent the asset moving from the UK to any other country, and once I put all those three things together, scarcity, unconfiscatability, and transportability, I quickly came to a conclusion that over the long term, if enough people understand this and enough people agree on this, that the price of this is going to go up over the long term. So I started buying Bitcoin initially while I was studying it. And then it took me probably 2017 to think I'd studied it enough over that first 12 months. And I think the price rocketed up and everybody thought, right, okay, Bitcoin's here to stay. We've made it. We've cracked the code. And then there was a drawdown after that. And my enthusiasm for Bitcoin just kept growing. It didn't really link to the price. So from 2018 to 2020, I was trying to find as much good material as I possibly could to understand the asset in more detail. I was taking self-custody. I was learning how to hold it. And then we came to 2020. And I think for people who were class of 2016, class of 2017, that was the moment where it was a huge catalyst to gain deep conviction, because you already understood what the problem was and now you had an urgent reason to act. And in 2020, it was that moment where the presidents and prime ministers and central banks around the world effectively said, we are going to print money at a ferocious rate to hand it to individuals and hand it to businesses to ensure that we delay an economic shock that, if allowed to play out in a natural free market sense, would have meant that those who were highly leveraged would have paid a significant price, and that means businesses would have closed, but it also means people would have lost their houses. And I'm not saying that that's the right thing to have done there, but I don't think there is a right choice for the people who have access to the big red button and can print the money at that stage. That is a difficult situation to be in. But when they came out and explicitly said that they would increase the money supply significantly, that was the moment for me where I was absolutely orange pilled. And it was, okay, my personal balance sheet, I know what I'm doing. If it's free cash, it's buying cold storage Bitcoin. If it's trapped in tax wrappers, MicroStrategy began purchasing Bitcoin on the balance sheet at that time. If it's trapped in tax wrappers like ISAs and SIPs in the UK, it's going into businesses like MicroStrategy that are backed by Bitcoin. And from that moment forward, the catalyst had happened for me to say, okay, I've been saving up cash reserves in my business. And I've been watching them go down in value by 10%, in my opinion, year on year for the last 6-7 years. The solution has been obvious, but it's took somebody else to do it first for me to say, okay, my balance sheet's going into Bitcoin. And we became a business that was running on a Bitcoin standard from a balance sheet perspective as a private company from 2021 onwards. And I've been BTC-only Scott ever since, I suppose.
All right. Yeah, fascinating. And I think we all have a similar origin story here at discovering Bitcoin, and for the same reasons of the scarcity, transportability, and not being confiscable, right? Could you dig in a bit deeper into your company, XCE, and what the company does?
Yeah, so XCE Connecting Excellence Group, PLC, we have a flagship operating business called Spencer Riley. So that's an international executive recruitment company. So what that does is place senior level candidates in senior level roles across a number of different high growth industries that are completely uncorrelated to Bitcoin. And we've recently added a Bitcoin executive hiring division. So now we're able to bridge that gap between Bitcoin companies who are looking for either talent within the Bitcoin space or talent from the traditional sector that understand and want to find their place in Bitcoin. And then also for candidates in the traditional space who are looking to find their opportunity in Bitcoin. But our core business, Spencer Riley, places, if you can imagine, vice presidents, directors, partner level candidates, anything possibly from business development or regional sales director level candidates across industries like professional services. We work with the big four, so we work with your PwCs and your Deloittes and your Ernst & Youngs, business advisory firms that are globally well known, logistics businesses, some of which will be the biggest logistics companies in the world, construction and engineering businesses. We've worked in life sciences as well, Quentin, and gaming and tech. So each individual consultant in the business, they manage their own clients, they manage their own candidates, and they're in charge of driving and developing their own revenues. And then they'll be on basic salaries, which in our industry, everybody knows are quite modest basic salaries with a high earning potential based on results of the individual. So the executive recruitment company is a platform that's scalable, that allows you to plug and play new individuals into the business. So we're looking to attract high billing talent to come in, join the business, and it's sector agnostic and regional agnostic in its growth capabilities. So if someone comes in tomorrow and says, I focus solely on investment banking and I bill 500,000 to £1 million per annum, then they can just plug in at their desk, onboard onto our systems, and start generating revenues and profits. So the business, I don't know if that gives you enough detail on actually how we generate cash, but if I took January, for example, there's a handful of placements that I actually posted about just to give people an idea of what we do. And we placed a US-based sales director with an AI supply chain intelligence company. We placed a UK managing director with an integrated services business that's owned by a US business. And we placed a US director with a global consulting firm. And those candidates, will have managed them on behalf of the client. We've gone out and found every single person who could be right for the role, generated interest, understood their experience, and then introduced them to the candidate, manage them through that process where they're going into first stage, second stage, final interviews, manage the offer, and then at the end of that process, the start we charge a fee before we run a search, but at the end of that process there's our completion fee, which will range between 20,000 to 100,000 typically. So those ones I mentioned are probably at around about £40,000 to £50,000 invoices for the completion. And that's how we generate money. And that's why I believe this is a scalable business that is, the scalability is driven by the quality of the people who we can attract into the business. And that's where the PLC status for Bitcoin Strategy and the executive recruitment company, I believe we have an opportunity to positively disrupt our industry and attract the highest billing talent into the business as a result of having an aggressive Bitcoin Treasury strategy and a capital markets team on that side of the business. So hopefully that gives you a strong overview.
It does, thanks. And I'm wondering if are you able to attract more talent now with this Bitcoin Treasury in the background and this potential that the employees have to also profit from or get exposure from an increasing Bitcoin price? Do you see that you attract more talent since you have this in place?
Yes, my phone has been a lot busier. My diary has been a lot busier. So I'm meeting investors, but I'm also meeting talent who want to come into the business and join this journey. And the reason for that is there's a huge problem that we solve with this. From a talent point of view, let's just go a basic scenario. Most executive recruitment companies pay a similar basic salary, pay a similar commission scheme. There are 35 plus direct competitors to ours because we're based in quite an international hub for recruitment. So if we just took our area, for example, there might be 100 high billing consultants within a couple of mile radius of our office. Those consultants are generating fees for their business and they're earning good salaries and earnings over the year based on their own performance. But over a 1, 3, 5, 10, 15-year career with that company, at the end of that career, they've not locked in any of that value for the future. So the solution we're providing to executive recruiters is when you join the business, you'll have the same basic salary. You have the same opportunity to earn commission over that 1, 5, 10, 15-year period. But every year that you are delivering revenue and profit to this business that is allowing this business to increase its Bitcoin per share, you will also stack some long-dated performance-based share options linked to your performance. So each year you're building up some share options over that career. The value of those share options should be driven by, A, the operational revenue and profit that you're delivering into the business, the people that you bring into the business to deliver revenue and profit, and your teammates around you. So everybody's driving value into the operating business. And the capital markets and the Bitcoin Treasury strategy, which has access to the equity markets, which has access to convertible bonds markets, is driving Bitcoin per share increase on those share options that you're gaining. and you're benefiting from the long-term compounding annual growth rate of Bitcoin over your career. So effectively, you could look at it as you're doing exactly what you're doing in any other business. You're generating, or you're incentivized and you're motivated to generate more revenue. You've got a lower time preference because you're also looking at your long-dated share options that you can build up every year by hitting those numbers. And those share options are along on the Bitcoin side of the business as well, for you to build up and have some hope and some serious value alignment with other shareholders that at the end of your career, that's what you're building, and that allows you to protect your family and build the future that you want to build when you're coming towards the end of your career. And I think that gap it's certainly missing in our industry, in executive recruitment. It's probably missing in quite a few other industries as well. I suppose the other problem we solve with that is when you look at the structure of XCE Connecting Excellence Group, in the future, there will be businesses that would potentially be aligned with the company from a strategic perspective who may want to join the business. And that would come with cash reserves, no debt, and profitable businesses, but being able to switch those cash reserves into Bitcoin on day one and use long-dated incentives to allow business owners that are, let's say, my age. I'm 28 now. I'm not. I'm older than that, obviously. But business owners that are in their 30s and in their 40s and even in their 20s in our industry, there is no exit strategy for them. I mean, that sounds probably quite extreme, but if you're being approached by a competitor and they're looking to buy your business, then you have the risk of your best talent who are generating revenue leaving to join that competitor. And if that competitor buys the company, then the company that's acquiring the business has the risk that talent leaves. And then from a private equity point of view, they rarely purchase businesses in this industry because when they do, there's a risk that the talent walks out the door. So we're solving two big issues in our industry, and we're solving them by being powered by Bitcoin and being a public status business.
All right. Yeah, that's a fascinating approach. And I was just wondering if enough people see that, right? Because Bitcoin is still quite niche, and not everybody understands it. And so, do people see the value in those stock options in the end? But it looks like you do have you do attract talent through that already.
Yeah, it's been an education process for the team in the business over the last few years, where it starts with history of money. It starts with stalls of value, comparing DCAing strategies, and then moving on to here's what it would have looked like if a business had been doing it for 4 years, and here's what it looks like if we continue doing it for 4 years. Here is the results. And then going through the PLC side of it, and the people that are approaching me, some of them understand Bitcoin and some of them understand MicroStrategy and work within our competition and are interested in having conversations. But some of them are just looking at it as it's a free option. As in, if I'm a high performer and I don't understand Bitcoin that well, but I know there's a strong chance that Bitcoin's going to go up, but I'm at the start of my journey and I don't know how to buy Bitcoin, I don't know how to custody Bitcoin, then the second best thing is I get the same basic salary, I get the same commission, but I get some long-dated performance-based share options that are also backed by Bitcoin, and it's a long-term play and a long-term hedge. But you're right, in terms of education, I'm consistently speaking to recruitment company owners. I'm in a network of probably a few hundred, and on podcasts in that space as well, because you have to understand Bitcoin. You then have to understand the MicroStrategy, Bitcoin Treasury strategy playbook. Then you have to understand our industry. The people I'm speaking to understand our industry, so you're working backwards, and it's probably easier to work backwards in this environment than it is to work forwards.
To piggyback on the education, you needed to have some education to your employees when you started the strategy, right? And now, how do you do this? So do you also now have internal Bitcoin education that you do with the employees, or what's the plan here? How do you approach this?
So the employees don't have to be Bitcoin maximalists, and some of them won't be. Some of them are on the journey to becoming Bitcoin maximalists. Some of them, it's just a benefit that we wouldn't have with any other recruitment firm, and it's we've got a public status, and they can see the reality of what the balance sheet now looks like. We've got obviously the convertible bonds issued and settled and all these things. And they're on a learning journey. And the ones coming in, but anybody in the business or anybody coming into the business will have watched What's the Problem by Joe Bryan. I don't know if you've seen that video. And Joe Bryan is a pro bono education advisor to the business as well. So there is no, Joe wouldn't take any money for doing that, is what I'm saying by pro bono. But if there's an opportunity for us to be able to get What's the Problem in front of our industry and to get people like Joe in front of the business networking groups that we're a part of. And even if you look at the big four have got quite a good understanding of digital assets in niche divisions in those businesses now. The consulting firms, some of them are showing interest. But if you look at the wider companies, we work with some globally recognized brands. And at the moment that they're interested in understanding Bitcoin, we have the network with the likes of Joe Bryan and with the likes of the board as well, with the likes of VJ Selvin, to be able to provide advisory or educational services to them and know who are the right people to put in touch. And I suppose the whole business is geared around connecting human capital to digital capital and connecting people. And it is a people-driven, network-driven business, which I would argue Bitcoin is a people-driven, network-driven asset as well, in that it relies on individuals adopting and individuals helping other individuals understand it and adopt it. Much the same as the market, the recruitment consultants in our industry, the company owners in our industry, and the clients of our industry, which probably include every single organization in the world, is probably a client of some kind of executive search firm somewhere. Once they all understand it, then Bitcoin education, integration and adoption throughout the corporate environment starts to become normalized. And I would love to see that become a normalized conversation. At the moment, I've had CEOs and MDs reach out to me from the traditional sectors who you just wouldn't expect to kind of congratulate us on what we're doing, say that they're behind us, and kind of disclose that we've got a real serious interest in Bitcoin, but we've got nowhere to have that conversation internally. And they're at MD level or CEO level, but they don't have the sort of environment where they could bring it up in the boardroom just yet.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I think it's great to have a Bitcoin strategy. Any company should have a Bitcoin strategy and exactly help to educate everybody around it so that they also understand the strategy and where the company is going towards. Because as you mentioned, it's high quality people that make your company work. And so if they understand where the company is heading, then it just makes it easier just overall, and also attracting talent. And leading to this, exactly the industry where you are is basically based on high quality people. And so what's not to have any other business that is high quality? Like, as you mentioned, for example, Big Four, the main capital is the people that are there, the consultants. They could potentially do it as well, right? The Bitcoin strategy, I mean.
Yeah, of course they could copy our strategy. I think it takes quite a long time to educate a board, educate it's harder to move the bigger they are. So I don't expect to see them implementing a strategy like ours. We're very fortunate that it's been a private business that's a business with a significant growth potential and platform for growth on the operational side and the Bitcoin Treasury side, but we are at a small market cap and we are geared to grow. If we were at a significant market cap with thousands of employees, then communicating that across thousands of people is more difficult. And Bitcoin didn't start with 100,000 people adopting it and then understanding it. It started with a few adopting it and a few more understanding it and a few more. And I think we're at the right size to be able to demonstrate to those businesses as they go on that journey in the next, we could say 4-8 years for a business like that to begin really implementing a Bitcoin standard and linking incentives to join the business, the incentives and motivations to perform in the business, and the incentives and motivations to stay in the business within those larger businesses. Will need leadership that can make the decision. And I suppose you've probably seen that at the most significant size. You could really see it start in a ultra Bitcoin standard conviction when you saw MicroStrategy go into this in 2020. You've seen since like Tesla buying Bitcoin on the balance sheet and GameStop buying Bitcoin on the balance sheet, but it's not at their core ethos, and they're not a Bitcoin standard business. But that's still great for Bitcoin and still great for corporate adoption. And maybe that's how it starts with a lot of businesses where it's not at the core. They're big enough to just be able to protect and preserve the value on their balance sheet and understand that they can now have the opportunity to lock in value over the long term. And granted, those are public businesses anyway, and their staff will be in some manner incentivized through long-dated share options.
I think it was either Saylor or Fong Li that mentioned it's not about intelligence, but it's about taking courage. And I think that's basically what you did as a pioneer in the industry to start doing this Bitcoin strategy within your industry to get traction for your employees and probably just right now it's just a great opportunity for you to attract talent while the others lag behind anyway, right? So that's
of course. There's no other executive recruitment company in the world that wires its recruiters' long-dated performance-based share options into operating growth, Bitcoin Treasury and capital markets, Bitcoin yield, and then the compounding growth of and value of Bitcoin. And I think that's a big differentiator for us. And going forward with the sort of conservative estimates and growth plan that we have in place for the business, we haven't touched on the capital market side of it just yet. But if that was taken out of the equation and we were a private business, then we would be expecting to deliver a 25% Bitcoin yield based on the size of the Bitcoin stack that we have right now anyway. So you couple that in with public status and Bitcoin Treasury strategy, that's our mission. But it would be great to see our entire industry that's full of small, fragmented private businesses understanding the strategy and copying the strategy to the level of conviction that they have right now. I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend they all go all in, but I'd recommend we match it to where they are in the journey.
Yeah, it's so interesting in the Bitcoin treasury space. Obviously, we talk about Bitcoin treasuries in general, but if you break it down into the specific industry, then suddenly there's new innovation like your company that comes with and just a slightly different nuance, but it makes quite a big difference when you start really deep diving into it.
I had a question actually about you going public last year. You listed on the public market, and do you have any plans for an at-the-market offering, or is that a strategy for you to accumulate more Bitcoin by offering shares, or do you have any plans in that direction?
Yes, I believe we have the right products in place right now for the business and where we are right now, which is we have an accelerated placing agreement in place in partnership with a capital markets business that's globally known. That is in effect, as the UK has, that is in effect an ATM. It runs in a similar manner to an ATM. So we have an ATM in place that we will action at appropriate levels of MNAV and volume and liquidity, and that would be in a high MNAV environment. If you look at a lower MNAV environment, we also have the XCE Bitcoin bonds, which are the first truly Bitcoin-denominated bonds in that the bonds actually track the value of Bitcoin, so the conversion price moves with the value of Bitcoin. So over the last few weeks, although the Bitcoin price has drawn down, so has the conversion price. So our share price, when it overperforms Bitcoin by 20%, the soft call option for us to be able to convert them bonds comes in place. So at the moment, we have in a lower MNAV environment the convertible bonds to be able to scale up and roll out throughout 2026. We have an ATM-style equity offering in the accelerated placement agreement for a high MNAV and high volume environment to accrete value for shareholders and raise the floor and build the Bitcoin to the levels that we want to start achieving throughout this year. And there are other products that we're working on, and we have a capital markets team that has Richard Byworth as an advisor. Richard's given significant amounts of time and energy and resources and network to the business and continues to do so. And the products that we're talking about designing going into the future are all geared towards increasing Bitcoin per share for shareholders in the most optimal manner based on different market circumstances. And then we have VJ Selvin, who is ex-Goldman Sachs and is at C-level within one of the large digital asset exchanges. And then we have Sam Roberts, who has serious capital markets experience and was the first person to lead a British pension fund allocation to Bitcoin. I think it was a 3, maybe 5, I don't know, get the number wrong, but I think it's 3 to 5% allocation to Bitcoin that he led. Now, obviously, he spent the last number of years. There's a lot of education goes into the process before you're able to lead a British pension fund allocation to Bitcoin. And we're partnered with Cartwrights, where Sam is Director of Investment Consulting, to ensure that we've got the highest levels of governance, of due diligence, and of execution when it comes to our exchange providers, when it comes to custodian or custody arrangements, and make sure that we've got, as an executive recruitment firm, it was a chance for us going through that process to build an extremely strong capital markets team. Because as we move into Bitcoin executive recruitment, we need to be able to say that's what we can deliver, and that's the strength of our network. So, yeah, we have an ATM in place.
Nice. And what we've seen from the bigger Bitcoin Treasury companies is the preferred shares, right? With Strategy leading the charge last year, and a few others like Strive adopting it, and MetaPlanet will soon come out with their own. And the issue with preferred shares is you need a certain size before it makes sense, right? And Eve has talked to Sander Anderson from H100 a few weeks ago, and he mentioned a potential strategy of pooling Bitcoin from different companies, like a collaborative model of different companies pooling their Bitcoin and then issuing products out of that pool. Is that something you would be interested to look into, or did he approach you on that?
I was on a panel with Sanders last week. I don't know if you saw. He told me about the concept, told me about the idea, and I think there's a lot of innovation in this space. And Sanders is one of the leaders in the space, and a very innovative, very experienced guy. So I would always listen to Sanders and look to gain a good understanding of what the commercial model looks like going forward. In the broad sense, I can see where he's heading with that, and pooling Bitcoin as the ultimate pristine collateral, and allowing them to access the size and scale that they need to issue digital credit. But right now, for XCE Connecting Excellence Group, we are an executive recruitment firm that has a high growth potential on our revenue. We have a Bitcoin-powered international executive recruitment group, and the Bitcoin Treasury strategy. We have a highly ambitious Bitcoin Treasury strategy with the right team in place to deliver that. So we see initially reasonable benchmarks to begin preparing for and considering main market listings. So we purposely built the team, and we purposely brought the CFO on board. Our CFO, Angus, has main market listing experience, and we have stated we want to get to 1,000 Bitcoin as soon as possible in the most beneficial manner to our shareholders. But on that journey to that, I would reasonably see, or you could reasonably suggest now, that 300 to 500 Bitcoin is the range where we can begin preparing for a main market uplisting. And outside of the balance sheet being that strong, as we go on that journey there, for the last 4 years, we've had a 30% compound annual growth rate to our revenues. In January, we posted 253,000 as a monthly revenue in the first month of the year, which puts us at a decent run rate. And we are engaged in talks with talent to join the business. So with the conservative hiring strategy in the base case, we want to be locking in Bitcoin yield from the operating business. But those benchmarks in the Bitcoin Treasury side of the balance sheet, where you say, okay, well, what does the operating business look like when you get into 300, 500, and if the balance sheet was at 1,000 Bitcoin, what does the operating business look like? The operating business starts accelerating at that level because everybody in our competitors then sees what's going on in the business and wants to join the business, and we need to verify their experience, their performance, the revenue they generate, and their cultural fit. But we have a scalable business that can welcome new people in and build. So I think we've got two flywheels, and it's about both of those flywheels compounding the other one. The more operating revenue we do, the more attractive we become to the capital markets and the more Bitcoin per share we can increase on the Bitcoin strategy. The more we attract capital and the more innovative we are in increasing Bitcoin per share on the Bitcoin strategy side of the business, the more attractive we become to revenue on the operating side of the business. And it's about that dual compounding flywheel of operating business, Bitcoin strategy, and the revenues from the operating business being uncorrelated to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin price, but accelerated by the Bitcoin strategy.
Yeah, I think the two flywheel just kind of got me thinking actually that now to your motto or to your slogan, connecting human capital to digital capital, and both flywheels work in connection, right? Basically.
Yeah, the more human capital is generating revenue, the more Bitcoin we buy. But by doing that, the more attractive the business becomes to the capital markets, who are looking at it as an investment. Okay, the more investment we put into this business, the more talent they attract, the more revenue they generate. So it's both flywheels turning, and that's probably the education challenge for the business going into the market, is just helping people understand how both of those flywheels compound value growth in each other over the long term.
Yeah, that's quite amazing, because I've been watching quite a few podcasts where you've been on in order for me to understand how XCE works in general, and only now talking to you I realized that the two flywheels, how they work. So it took me a bit of time, and I'm deep into the research, so I can imagine for other people that are maybe just kind of browsing around, it can get not it's not so easy basically.
Well, people get them moments over time with the business. As Richard Barr said, it's a version 2.0 Bitcoin Treasury company. And that dual flywheel of attract more human capital, generates more revenue, generates more profit, makes it more attractive on the Bitcoin strategy flywheel to the capital markets, which allows you to increase Bitcoin per share and accelerate the Bitcoin flywheel. Once you've got a grasp of both of them aspects of a business, you have a pretty strong understanding of the business. But until you really understand and are involved in the industry, where you say, okay, so the basic salaries are here, but if somebody generates this much revenue, they earn that much on top of the basic salary, and they'll get some share options as well that compound. Until you start understanding that, okay, what if they don't generate that revenue? Well, their earnings go down as well. And everybody knows this, like the people who are watching this in the office, we all know, and it's a very meritocratic environment. It's a self-sovereign environment. You earn as much, you earn dependent on how much you bill. So like our convertible bonds track the Bitcoin price, the cost of an employee tracks the revenue that they bring in. So we're protected on the downside as well. And I think that's probably an industry nuance that made me more comfortable back in 2021 going onto a Bitcoin standard. And throughout that period, we watched revenues go up 30% year on year, and we watched the Bitcoin price go down 80%. And it's quite a particular industry to be able to execute this, I believe, which is why I'm not sure every industry can do this. But service-based, people-based businesses are the best ones to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it comes back to one of my comments before around the high quality people that you would have, and this second flywheel works only for those types of businesses. You cannot replicate that in any industry for sure. And here I just want to take one step back and go back to your convertible bonds, your Bitcoin-denominated convertible bonds, because I think it's very interesting how you set it up. So maybe for the audience, would you mind just explaining how you set them up?
Yeah, do you want me to go through numbers? I'll pull some numbers up in front of me if you want, but I'm going ballparks here. But before the Bitcoin price drew down recently, I think the 120% soft call conversion price was at 3.5 pence. And when I say, so here's the bond conversion price, here's the Bitcoin price. Conversion price is 30% of the share price. So share price is thumb, conversion price is the finger there, Bitcoin is here. When Bitcoin's drew down over the last few weeks, the soft call conversion price that's 20% above conversion price. The soft call option also reduces and increases depending on the Bitcoin price. So a few weeks ago, I think the soft call option was at 3.5 pence, and yesterday I think the soft call option was at 2.7 pence because the Bitcoin price has drawn down. So to put it simply, the XCE Bitcoin bond program appeals to investors who are looking for Bitcoin-denominated exposure and benefits shareholders because it increases Bitcoin per share and they are sold at a 30% premium to share price. There's a 0% interest on them and they are 12-month maturity. So the first one that we issued and settled last month at 10 Bitcoin, if we get to the end of the 12-month period and the investor would like it to be redeemed in Bitcoin, then we take a 2% charge to cover the administrative costs of issuing the bonds and managing the custody, and then we return the Bitcoin back to the investor. If we did get to that stage where where our share price, in a most bear case scenario, our share price had not outperformed Bitcoin by 20%, and there had not been a conversion where that gets locked in on the balance sheet, then we would have the opportunity on our side to decide if we'd like to refix the conversion price, provided it is accretive to shareholders and above a 1M NAV, to make it attractive to the bondholders to allow the Bitcoin to go onto the balance sheet and take the repayment in shares. So, in effect, selling them at 130% premium, it's 120% of the 130% premium is conversion price. 120% of conversion price is the opportunity for us to call the bonds and convert the bonds. And there's 0%. And Richard Byworth and VJ Selvin have put a lot of time into designing the bonds. And when we're also speaking to the type of ultra high net worth Bitcoin individuals and investors who will be interested in those bonds, we wanted to create an environment where it's win-win for the shareholders and the bondholders, and there's no lose for any of the parties, business, shareholders or bondholders as well, and minimize that downside. So it's capped at a 2% downside in Bitcoin-denominated terms for the bond buyers, with significant upside. For shareholders, there's only upside there and Bitcoin per share increase, and for the business, there's minimal risk.
I think those convertible bonds, those Bitcoin-denominated convertible bonds, are a stroke of genius. I believe Capital B started with them, and you're probably the only other company that has done them. At least I'm not aware of any other ones, right?
I think that other businesses might have done them. Capital B were the first to do them. I think you're correct in saying that. I think Capital B commented on it and sort of summing up from there. So it's good to see the evolution. I suppose the key difference with us is the Bitcoin denomination. So if the conversion price was here and the Bitcoin price dropped and the share price dropped, then it's difficult to convert them. So ours are truly denominated in Bitcoin. I think that's the evolution that we've put in place and added to the ecosystem, if you like, that hopefully we'll see people replicate in the future.
It's fascinating. The innovation keeps going forward every few months in the Bitcoin Treasury space, whether it's in the industry or in the different financial engineering products that are just revolutionizing finance in general. It's fascinating. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think would be especially valuable for the listeners?
I think An area we haven't touched on probably is just the Bitcoin executive recruitment division that might appeal to listeners from point of view of that's geared. If you're a vice president of marketing, if you're a vice president of sales, if you're a senior sales leader in any of the traditional industries, but you're a Bitcoiner and you really want to find your place in Bitcoin, then it's an opportunity for them to have a confidential conversation with the business for us to understand their experience, their salary expectations, their motivations, and be able to let them know as and when a position comes around that's the right fit for their background. And just to add on that, we work extremely confidentially so they can continue in their current roles and there's no day-to-day changes to those when you're working with a business like ours. But it means we know when to put a confidential call in when there's the right opportunity in the industry for them. And then from a client perspective, we're on a chief investment officer role at very late stages now and a vice president of client relationships role, which are both in the Bitcoin investment fund space. We're also working on CFO level roles in the Bitcoin mining arena. And then we're working with very innovative startups who are building boards and advisors and engaged in conversations with capital allocators in the industry as well. So we're looking to build that bridge for Bitcoin businesses to find the talent that they need to go forward and build the business into the future, and also for people looking to find their place in this space. So I think it's probably just worth letting them know that. And if they wanted to reach out, then on LinkedIn, we have XCE Connecting Excellence Group, me, Scott Ellam, on there, and I can put them in touch with the right colleague if they drop me a message on LinkedIn. And also we have a community on XCE official company page, and then myself if they've got any questions about the business or any interest in joining the community and the network.
That's another synergy that you managed to plug into the whole Bitcoin community or the Bitcoin space, which it's also quite nice.
Yeah, I suppose our community, it's been a low sentiment environment for Bitcoin treasury companies for the last few months. We're a version 2 business that's different, but we've also been stacking Bitcoin since 2021. So I'd love to see throughout this year our community build off the back of candidates, clients, and people who are interested in finding their space in Bitcoin, as much as investors and people who are joining us on the journey from an investment point of view. There's a real demand for talent in this space, and that demand is growing.
Exactly, coming back to that second flywheel with human capital.
Yes.
Nice. All right, great. So before we wrap up here, could you let people know where to follow you and XCE?
At BTC-only Scott is my Twitter handle, which I've kept from my previously anonymous business leader with Bitcoin on the balance sheet days. LinkedIn, you can find me, Scott Ellam, and then on XCE official, and then we have an XCE Connecting Excellence Group community as well on X. And LinkedIn, we also have our flagship operating business, Spencer Riley, to give a follow if you're looking to find a place in Bitcoin, or if you're just looking for a new role within your current high growth market. We've got plenty of positions available in the norming land, as you might call it.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put all those links into the show notes. Make sure that everybody checks them out. If you're looking for a new role, make sure to hit up Scott. And Scott, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure and quite revealing for me as well at the same time.
Awesome. That's good to hear. It's good to hear. Thank you very much, guys. Really enjoyed it.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?